One of the really basic things in leatherworking is punching holes for putting snaps, rivets, stitching, or just to have a hole for a sizing hole on a belt or strap. And as you can see, there's a lot of variation here of different tools that are used for that, and it can be kind of confusing to somebody who's new to leather crafting as to what exactly they need for what they're going to do. So I figured I'd make a little quick video about what I have out here in front of me and how things are used and why, and what would be better in one way or another. Um, the old, extraordinarily basic tool for punching holes in leather is a stitching awl. It is exactly what it sounds like. It is a handle and a little sharp blade. It's got a diamond cross section to the blade, so that when it pushes through the leather, you want to keep one of those flat sides parallel to your edge, and it just punches diamond shaped holes that can be used for stitching. Just little tiny ones that'll close right back up around your stitching. The most simple basic tool, just a sharp point. From there are tools that are called diamond chisels. And these are available in different widths and different sizes and thicknesses. They're sometimes called pricking irons as well. Though a pricking iron can be just to mark leather that you'll then go back and use an awl on. You can also use diamond hole chisels to punch through, and it'll punch holes that are already lined up the way that you would want to line up an awl hole, where a flat side of it is parallel to the edge. And those would just be driven through with your mallet. I use those a lot whenever I'm hand stitching, rather than punch each hole with an awl, though there is still occasional times when an awl is useful. On another aspect of the stitching holes, there's some fancier tools like this one that's got 4 hollow tubes in it and can punch 4 holes at a time. This actually removes a plug of material, so you wind up with a larger hole. It'll be easier to stitch through, but your thread can be kind of wobbling around in it, so it doesn't look nearly as neat and clean as where the leather closes back up around an awl hole. But it's a quick, easy way for beginners to punch a bunch of holes. That'll be easy to stitch through. These are usually called 4-in-1 or something similar to that punches, and you can get replacement tubes that go in them most of the time as well. I don't use that tool very much because, like I said, I don't like the look of the stitches that come from it. Ones that I do use for leather lace are chisels like these. And they come in either straight chisels, where they're flat, or angled chisels. And they come in different sizes, different widths of lace that they're supposed to go with. And they're just flat chisels that are, when you're using leather lace to bind something on, especially for like decorative lacing on wallets, I use them quite a bit to do the double loop lacing around the edge of a wallet. Like on this wallet, which is my wallet that I've had for 15 years, it's this lacing along the edge that looks like it's braided. Then we get into the punches I probably use the most when I'm doing leather crafting, and that is drive punches. Drive punches are the same hollow tubes that the 4-in-1 punch had. They've got a cutting edge down here, and then the punchings will pop out the side. So you can just keep punching holes, and it'll just spit out these little leather bits all the time. And again, these come in a bunch of different sizes. There's some variation in them, though. There's some that are really nice. There's some that are cheaper ones. Even these will be a little rough sometimes when you get them. And the more you use them, the more polished up they get, the easier it is to get them to not stick in the leather. They'll punch through and pop right back out. You can actually speed that process up, of course, by polishing them with a buffing wheel, or even just use your strop and spit them on it. And then once they're polished up nice and neat, they punch through, pop right out. You have to have a good surface underneath that you're not going to damage your punch when you hit it. This is a polyethylene cutting board I always work on. If you use wood, you want to use the end grain of the wood if you can. I've seen people use these on pine boards and they will wind up chipping their punch because the hard parts of the grain and the pine, it's inconsistent. It has soft spots and hard spots, and that'll just take chips out of these tubes. So you want to have a nice consistent surface underneath, like this cutting board. So when you punch through, you don't damage your tools. These are cheaper ones that you can pick up lots of random places. I think Harbor Freight has them. You can find them sometimes at auto parts stores for punching gasket material. I'm sure you can find a ton of them on Amazon because these are just made in China. They're softer material. They don't hold an edge as well. And they're really kind of thick up in this part that cuts through. So by the time they punch through the leather, they're pushing so much leather out to the side that they stick a lot, or they're just really hard to drive through. So they're not quite as good, but I've got a bunch of them because I've just picked them up or somebody have given them to me. And some of them are like this large one. They're sizes I didn't have in my other punches. So I do use them. But they're not quite as good a quality of punch. But they do work just fine. Now I've also have ones that they're like this where there's a handle and they've got a little tube that can be taken out of it. They come apart. And you can change out different size tubes. That's a handy little option for beginners because you can wind up, they're usually cheaper than the drive punches. You can get replacement tubes sometimes for them, but usually the whole set is cheaper than getting a couple drive punches. So it's worthwhile for a beginner to pick up a set like this and have a usable punch. It's not the best punch, but a usable punch that they can use. They also make sets of them, at least I assume somebody's still making them. They did a few years ago, that have the lacing chisel points that can go into them. Still in the drive punch category, there's other sizes of them too. Sometimes there's what's called filigree punches, which I don't have any out here, but they can be squares or diamond shapes or various things for doing decorative cut out patterns that are just cutting away shapes in the leather. But this one's an oval hole punch. These are a little trickier to use because you got to keep them straight as you're going along, but they're really nice for belts. When you've got a really thick strap of leather and a heavy buckle, an oval shaped hole like this, the belt will lay flatter than if it's a round hole. So the buckle tongue can go through it without making the leather go out of the way as much, if that makes sense. Like I said, these just punch longer oval holes as opposed to the round holes. And again, they're driven with a mallet. The other punch you see a lot, especially among beginners, you'll see a cheaper version of this punch. They're very versatile. I keep one around for if I just need a quick hole and I'm not at my workbench, I'm not at my cutting board. And it's called a Rotary Punch. It's got a little wheel here, the sprocket, and you can select which size punch you want to use by clicking it around. An anvil there, and you basically just squeeze it. It's pretty obviously how it works. It does take a little bit of hand strength to pop through, and usually you want to give it a little bit of a twist, but it'll punch a hole through. Now its disadvantage is for the most part, it's for punching on belts or straps, it doesn't reach very far into a piece. You can only get so far in before you're out of room, basically, out of throat on this. There is a way to get around that if you really have to. You can kind of use this like a drive punch. You can select that size that you want, only instead of putting it to the anvil, you put it to the outside. You turn the tool upside down, and you hit it with your mallet. And you can punch a hole out in the middle of something with that tool. It's not the way it's meant to be used. It might damage it if you're not careful, especially if you're using one of the cheaper ones. It might damage it. This one's one of the heavy-duty ones that costs quite a bit more. But you can find these rotary punches very cheap. It's just usually the handles are so flimsy that after punching a few times, the handles start to bend and they become basically useless. But they are convenient to have for, like if you've got straps that you don't have sized and you've got them set up to where you can just cut them off and size them at a show, you can customize right there for people, and you don't have to have the whole table with all the workbench and everything to work on. You can just pop a few holes, take a pair of shears and cut it off, and you're good, and you don't have to have all this set up to use it. Some other specialty punches, and these I do use pretty regularly, but they're not necessary for a beginner to get, are things like these oblong punches. They're sometimes called bag punches by leatherworkers. And these punch long slots for putting a strap through a piece of leather, or where you're going to put a buckle on a belt. You want a long, thin slot for the buckle tongue to go through. They take a little bit more to hit through, but they punch a nice long slot like that. Very useful tool, but they're not absolutely necessary for a beginner, because a beginner could also just go ahead and take a round punch and punch 2 holes, and then just use their knife to connect those holes together. And I do that quite a bit when I don't have the right size punch for what I'm actually trying to do. You just cut basically from each side. Cut on each side that way, turn it around, and finish out the cut from this way. It's not quite as neat and clean of a hole, but it is just as strong and sturdy because you've got that round hole punched at each end. So like I said, I've got different sizes of those. They come in a lot of different sizes. I've seen these up to like 2 inches long and 3/8 of an inch wide. They may even come bigger than that, but that's getting to be where it takes a lot of mallet to drive it through. The other punch that isn't really necessary for beginners are strap end punches, like these. This is kind of considered a multi-purpose up to about a 2-inch with this flat point. This is an English strap end point. I think that's about a 1-inch. There's, again, all different sizes of these. These are pretty pricey usually. And like I said, not necessary for most beginners. They're convenient to have if you're punching into a strap a lot and punching out a lot of pieces. But you could just mark this end. Especially there's plastic templates that you could be used to mark these ends instead, and then just use your knife to cut them. And those plastic templates look like this. Not sure how well they actually show up on camera because they are clear. But this one has everywhere from 1/2 inch up to 2-inch by 1/4 inch increments. Well, there's a 5/8 even in there. And the same thing for round ends on this one. Which I don't have any of the round end punches because I've always just cut those with my knife. So that's kind of the basics of it. And if I would say what a beginner really needs to get started in leatherworking, probably in all, is, like I said, the basic tool for stitching. Some people will just even start with a drill press and drill holes. That's got the same problem that the 4-in-1 punch does. It leaves big holes that your thread just kind of wobbles around in. But you could use it. And then I would say probably get a set of drive punches, even one of these with the replaceable ends, so that you have a series of different size holes from a 1/16 of an inch. You'll need an 1/8 of an inch for rivets and snaps. 5/32 and 3/16 are used a lot for belts, for the buckle sizing holes, and some other types of snaps. Screw posts would go through 3/16. And then if you're going to do anything like grommets or eyelets, you would need whatever size punch you need for those. But like I said, these sets that go from about a 16th up to about 3/16 are really useful. And that would be one of my suggestions for a beginner. Something like that, a good mallet, or even a cheap mallet. A block of wood would work as a mallet. And a set of drive punches. And then something for your stitching holes. So that would be my suggestion for a beginner. So all of this, it's nice to have, but a lot of it is not entirely necessary. If you have any other questions about any leatherworking tools or techniques, go ahead and put something in the comments below. I might know something about it and be able to make another video. If you enjoyed this video and found it helpful or entertaining, please consider hitting that like button. And maybe even subscribe to the channel. If you haven't decided yet, there's always watching another video from this channel, and any one of the above will help this channel grow. And thank you for watching.